Annalie, your perspective when you
Uh,
start to talk about diversity.
I'm with you, Simon. There's so much in that, Nola. Wow, that's such a great way to kick off this conversation. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands. For me here, it's the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. For me, when I think about this idea of diversity, equity, inclusion, even those words are a process toward an outcome. And for me, the DEI outcome is all about belonging. So I'm really interested in this idea of understanding, do we have, a diverse selection of thinking and backgrounds and perspectives, all that sort of stuff. The diversity is there. Do we have equity among those groups? And do we have inclusion for those differences? And often what I see is people ticking the box for diversity, but that creates difference, and difference creates struggle and dangerous dialogue. And so without the understanding of the difference and the ability to include, we don't get to the outcome of belonging. So for me, the way I enter this conversation, and I'm very much coming from an interpersonal perspective, I think it's worth mentioning. So I'm not really thinking about broad policies and procedures and societal norms in this space. I'm coming from an interpersonal dynamic. What happens on the ground, belly to belly, when people are trying to live and breathe DEI principles? And so for me, as an expert in communication dynamics, what's really important is helping people get heard. That's the work that I do. And in this space, when I enter this dialogue around DEI with people for the first time, laymen, or even in my trainings, I really want them to understand that belonging comes from, or how you make people feel like they belong, is to understand the experience of the other, or the outer, or the outsider, right? So we have this idea of the inside group and the outside group. And the dare I say it, Simon, Carla, Nola, the beauty of this topic is that
Mm.
it's a human topic. And so everyone has experienced what it feels like to be on the outer, to be excluded. And I'm talking about people in the majority. We've all had this feeling of being on the outer. And so I try and bring people into the importance of this experience by reminding them what it felt like when you were the other, when you were the outsider. Because if you spend too much time in your majority groups surrounded by people who think like you, walk like you, talk like you, act like you forget what it's like to be in the margins. And so I'll have conversations like, in a room full of I'll remind, you know, in a room full of men and women, I'll say, put your hand up if you've ever walked to your car in a dodgy underground car park with your keys between your knuckles, right? Ready as a weapon or to get into your car quickly. And of course, just the women put their hand up for the most part. And the men look around going, oh, that's not my experience. And it's a jolt. Wow, there's a whole other way of being that I'm not aware of that makes me feel that I don't have that experience. I need to be more curious. For men, I might say perhaps you're, taking care of your new baby and you're in a shopping center and you're looking for a change table and you realize that they're all in the female toilets. That's an experience of an other, an outsider. We're not considering you. No, we're not thinking that you
Mm.
don't feel like you belong in the parenting space because we're not creating safe spaces for the father to be the parent.
Mm.
So that those kinds of conversations really make it a personal place to start. And I really think that's where we need to start.
Mm. Wonderful. Again, a whole lot of amazing stuff coming out of that response. And, I instantly think that, when I start thinking about my own learning or anyone's learning around diversity, it's as much an understanding and sharing your own perspective on that, your unique background and set of circumstances that creates your experience of the world, as it is recognizing experiences that aren't yours. And like we talk about, the lane you're not in, the space you're not in. And sometimes I've found as much learning comes from recognizing that, and probably more learning comes from recognizing that sometimes for certain groups, than really about the sharing that of someone else's perspective on it, if that makes sense. It's really, really, I guess, been one of the biggest learnings I've had going on the journey so far. It has been the ability for people to open up about their experience, and then the wow factor other people have had, recognizing that, understanding that, and then actually just hearing those stories. I think that concept of belonging, it sets the basis for that, doesn't it? When people have been feel free and have been able to share those perspectives, other people have understood things they haven't learnt before, but they've also shared things maybe they haven't shared before. They've probably been some big takeaways for me so far.